Since June 19, 1944. Normandy, France. The sky over Normandy was gray that morning, thick clouds hanging low, as if even the heavens were tired of the war. The smell of mud, oil, and gunpowder filled the air. It was just 2 weeks after the D-Day landings, and the Allies were slowly pushing deeper into Nazi-held France. Private Jack Turner, a 19-year-old gunner from Ohio, sat inside his M4 Sherman tank nicknamed Lucky Girl. The name was painted in white letters just above the cannon barrel, but no one really believed in the name anymore. The Sherman was a decent tank, fast and easy to move, but against a Tiger, it felt like a tin can going up against a steel monster. Everyone in the unit had heard the stories, how the Tiger tank could knock out a Sherman from over a mile away, while the Sherman's shells just bounced off the Tiger's thick armor. The Germans called it the Königstiger, the King Tiger. And now, reports said one of them was blocking the only road that led into the town of St. Lo, where German forces were believed to be regrouping. Jack was nervous. It wasn't his first fight, but it was the first time he might face a Tiger tank. And if the stories were true, they were all as good as dead. Sergeant Collins, their tank commander, looked back at the crew. "All right, boys, listen up. Recon says there's a Tiger near the church in St. Lo. If we don't clear it out, the whole company's stuck. Command wants us to scout ahead. Just observe. Do not engage unless fired upon. Got it?" Everyone nodded, but no one looked comfortable. Observe usually turned into fight real fast in this war. The Sherman's engine roared as they moved through the muddy fields toward the town. Jack kept his hands on the gun controls, his eyes scanning for movement. The fields were quiet, too quiet. And then, just as they rolled into the outskirts, they saw it. The Tiger. It was parked near the old church, almost hidden behind a half-destroyed stone wall. Its long 88 mm cannon was still, but it looked like it could move at any second. Jack's heart jumped. He whispered, "We're dead." But something was off. The Tiger wasn't moving. No smoke, no sound. It might have been damaged, or maybe the crew wasn't inside. Collins raised his binoculars and stared for a moment. "Hold your fire. We wait." Suddenly, a flash. The Tiger's cannon moved and fired. The round flew just past their Sherman, exploding in the field behind them. Dirt flew into the air. It had missed by inches. "Back! Back!" Collins yelled, but the tracks were stuck in the muddy ditch. Jack's hands flew over the gun controls. He wasn't supposed to fire yet. The Tiger was stronger, better armored, and faster on the draw. But something inside him said no. He wouldn't die like this. He did something insane. He aimed not directly at the Tiger, but at the stone wall next to it. He remembered his gunnery instructor saying, "Sometimes the environment is your best weapon." Jack loaded a high-explosive shell, whispered a quiet prayer, and fired. The shell hit the stone wall. The explosion blew apart the old stones, sending them flying into the side of the Tiger like shrapnel. One chunk crashed straight into the turret ring. Smoke burst from the top of the Tiger as its hatch flew open. Collins stared in shock. "What the hell did you just do?" Jack blinked. I just cracked a Tiger." More smoke poured out. One of the German crew jumped from the hatch, screaming and on fire. The others tried to climb out, but gunfire from the other Allied tanks finished them off. The Tiger was dead. Jack Turner had just done what most thought impossible: taken out a Tiger tank with one crazy, lucky trick shot. His crew sat in stunned silence. Collins finally said, "Well, I'll be damned." And from that day forward, everyone started calling their tank Lucky Girl again, with a little more respect. The crew of Lucky Girl sat in stunned silence as the smoke from the ruined Tiger tank twisted into the sky like a black flag. Private Jack Turner's hands were still on the gun controls, frozen. The air inside the Sherman was hot, thick with the smell of gunpowder and metal. Outside, the battlefield was waking up. Gunfire in the distance shouting on the radio, other tanks moving into position. But for a moment, everything inside that steel box was still. Jack turned to Sergeant Collins, half expecting to be scolded for firing without orders. Instead, the sergeant just stared at him like he was looking at a ghost. "You aimed at the wall," Collins said slowly. "The damn wall," Jack swallowed hard. Yeah, I didn't think we could break through its armor, so I figured maybe the wall could." "Well, kid," Collins scratched the stubble on his chin, then gave a sharp laugh. "You're either the dumbest gunner I've ever met, or the craziest genius this army's got." The loader, Mike Torres, slapped Jack on the back, grinning. "I'll take crazy genius. That was nuts, man!" Before they could soak it all in, the radio crackled. "Echo 3, this is Eagle Command. Tiger confirmed destroyed. Move into St. Lo. Clear remaining hostiles. Watch for more armor. Over." Sergeant Collins grabbed the handset. "Copy that, Eagle. Tiger's toast." "Moving in." The tank rumbled forward, its treads crushing rubble and broken earth. Around them, other Shermans began advancing as well, emboldened by the fall of the Tiger. It was like a shadow had been lifted. The monster was gone, and now the town was within reach. But the celebration didn't last long. As Lucky Girl rolled down the narrow, wrecked streets of St. Lo, the sound of machine gun fire started up again, loud and fast. German infantry had holed up in buildings, using windows, rooftops, and craters as makeshift bunkers. Bullets pinged off the tank's armor like angry bees. "Turret! 3 o'clock! MG nest in the bakery!" shouted Collins. Jack swung the gun around and fired a high-explosive round straight through the bakery window. The explosion tore through the front wall, sending flour and fire out into the street. Pieces of bread and brick rained down together. Somewhere behind the smoke, someone screamed. They kept moving. Street by street, they cleared the town, backing up infantry squads who were kicking in doors and tossing grenades into basements. The Sherman wasn't just a tank now, it was a hammer, smashing everything in its path. And Jack was feeling it. That strange high that came from surviving the impossible. But deep down, he knew it had just been luck. That Tiger could have destroyed them. Should have destroyed them. One mistake, and it would have been their Sherman burning instead. Then came the second shock of the day. As they turned a corner near the town square, a second Tiger tank rolled into view, this one painted in dull camouflage, partially hidden by wreckage. The crew hadn't been warned. No radio chatter. No scouts had seen it. This Tiger had been waiting. The turret turned toward Lucky Girl with that same cold slowness that made every soldier's stomach turn. Jack's blood turned to ice. "Reverse! Reverse!" Collins yelled. But the street was too narrow, and another Sherman behind them blocked the retreat. The Tiger fired. The shell missed by inches, blasting a crater in the cobbled street just feet in front of the tank. The shockwave rocked Lucky Girl hard, and for a moment, Jack couldn't hear anything but ringing. He looked through the periscope. Smoke, debris, dust everywhere. But the Tiger was still there, reloading. They had 10 seconds. Maybe less. "Loader, he or AP?" Jack shouted. "Only one AP left. Load it, now!" Mike rammed the last armor-piercing round into the chamber. Jack took a deep breath. There was no time to outmaneuver the Tiger. No stone wall to use. No clever trick left. Just one shot. One chance. He aimed, not at the front armor, but slightly off-center, near the lower hull where the track met the side panel. He remembered reading somewhere the Tigers had a vulnerable gap near the suspension. It wasn't guaranteed, but it was all he had. He fired. The shell screamed out and hit just above the track. There was a flash, then smoke, then silence, and then fire. The Tiger didn't explode in some grand movie-style boom. It just burned, quietly, slowly. The turret stopped turning. A hatch flew open, and one German crewman tried to escape, but was shot down before he could run. Jack sat back, chest heaving. 2 Tigers. 2 kills. The tank was dead quiet. Even Collins didn't say anything this time. Finally, Mike whispered, "What the hell, Jack?" Jack looked down at his trembling hands. "I don't know." The smell of burning metal and flesh drifted through the broken streets of St. Lo as the second tiger smoldered quietly behind them. The flames were low but steady, licking up through the open turret like fingers dragging the dead into smoke. The silence after the kill was heavier than the gunfire that had filled the town just moments before. Inside Lucky Girl, nobody spoke. The crew sat stunned, not from shock anymore, but from something darker, something they couldn't quite name. It wasn't victory. It didn't feel like pride either. Maybe it was fear, or guilt, or just the weight of knowing they had walked through death and somehow were still breathing. 2 tigers. 2 kills. 1 crew. Jack leaned back against the steel interior, his face drenched in sweat. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. The second shot hadn't been a trick. It had been a gamble, and gamblers don't always win. Collins finally broke the silence. "Jack?" Jack didn't answer. He couldn't. The world outside the tank was still spinning, even if everything inside had gone quiet. "You just made history, kid." Jack looked at him. "Yeah, then why do I feel like throwing up?" Collins smirked slightly, but his eyes were heavy. "Because history's always written in blood, and we're drowning in it." Suddenly the radio crackled again. "Echo 3, Eagle Command. New orders. Reinforce western flank. Heavy German armor reported on the move. We're running on fumes, literally and mentally. Give us resupply, air support. Hell, even another tank to flank with. Then we'll talk." Briggs wasn't having it. "There's no time. If this black ghost pushes through, he'll cut the Allied line in 2. You want to sit here polishing steel while the front collapses?" He dropped a folder onto the tank's side. A recon photo showed the Tiger II moving through the ruins of a village. The name printed on the edge made Jack freeze. St. Leonard. His brother Mark had died there. He remembered the letter. "Your brother's tank was destroyed near St. Leonard by a German Tiger. No survivors." Jack picked up the folder slowly, staring at the image like it might speak to him. "This the same guy?" he asked, voice low. "Could be," Briggs said. "He was in North Africa. He's a ghost for a reason. He never leaves tracks." Jack looked at Collins. "If we don't stop him, more men die." "Maybe this time we don't walk away," Collins nodded slowly. "Let's end this." By noon, Lucky Girl was moving through a winding forest road, the trees closing in like silent witnesses. The mood inside the tank was different now. No jokes, no radio chatter, just breathing. Steady. Tight. Jack sat at his scope, scanning constantly. They reached the edge of St. Leonard just as smoke began rising from a farmhouse in the valley. A destroyed Churchill tank burned on the roadside. Its crew had tried to run. They hadn't gotten far. Then Jack saw it. The Tiger II sat in the middle of the village like a beast in its den. Its armor gleamed under the midday light, sleek, angled, and nearly invulnerable. But it was the insignia painted on the side that made Jack's blood run cold. A black skull, grinning beneath a shadowed helmet. The mark of Schwarzgeist. "Eyes on target," Jack whispered. Torres loaded the last HE shell. They'd been resupplied, but still no AP rounds. "They were going in blind." "Only shot we have is the tracks," Collins muttered. "Immobilize it, then try to flank." But Jack had another idea. He looked at the bell tower on the far side of the village, a church just like the one in St. Lo. "Forget the tank," he said. "Aim for the tower," Mike blinked. "You're going to drop a church on him?" Jack nodded. "If he's as good as they say, we can't beat him straight. But we can bury him." They moved fast, circling behind the ruins, using debris for cover. Jack lined up the shot. The Tiger II hadn't seen them yet. It was still scanning for more British tanks. Jack adjusted the scope. focused on the top of the bell tower. "Fire!" The shell screamed out, slamming into the base of the tower. The explosion ripped through stone and wood. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the tower began to collapse. Slow at first, then faster, crashing sideways in a cloud of dust and rubble. Right on top of the Tiger. A direct hit. The village shook. The Tiger II disappeared beneath tons of stone. Silence. And then, no movement, no escape, no return fire. The ghost was gone. Jack exhaled slowly. He'd buried the past, buried the beast. But in the quiet, he wondered, how many more ghosts would this war leave behind? The dust hadn't even settled when the radio came alive again. Static, then a voice, crackling with urgency. "Echo 3, come in. Is the target confirmed neutralized? I repeat, is the black ghost down?" Collins grabbed the handset, still staring at the collapsed bell tower. "Target buried. No movement. No survivors visible. Over." A pause. Then a quieter reply. "Copy that. Well done. Echo 3, return to Hill 214 for debrief." The voice sounded impressed, but distant, detached, as if this was just another box checked on a long list of missions, another number in the war ledger. But for Jack Turner, this wasn't just another kill. This was him, the one who killed Mark. He stayed at his post, eyes locked on the mountain of rubble that had buried the Tiger II. His chest was tight, but not from relief. Not yet. What if he's still alive? Jack asked quietly. Collins looked at him. After that? He'd need a miracle. Jack shook his head. Mark didn't get one. The crew didn't say anything. A few minutes later, Jack opened the hatch and climbed out. The air was thick with smoke and broken silence. He walked slowly toward the ruins of the Tiger II, boots crunching on shattered stone and burned timber. His steps were heavy, not from exhaustion, but from something deeper, from the weight of truth he needed to face. Half buried under stone and debris, the turret of the Tiger II jutted out at an angle. It looked like a wounded animal, bleeding smoke instead of blood. Jack paused a few feet away, gripping the sidearm on his belt. He didn't need it. Not really, but he had to see. He had to know. He climbed onto the wreckage carefully, pulling aside loose bricks and beams. Smoke stung his eyes, but he kept going, digging, scraping, ignoring the heat and dust. And then he found him, or what was left of him. Half crushed beneath the collapsed turret, a German tank commander lay motionless, face burned, uniform torn. But Jack could still see the black skull insignia on the collar. A Luger pistol rested in the man's hand, unused, dead. But what caught Jack's breath was something else, something clenched in the man's other hand. A photo, faded, like his own. But this one showed a German boy, smiling, maybe 6 years old, holding a wooden toy tank. Jack stared at it for a long time. The enemy had a son. The Black Ghost wasn't just a monster. He was someone's father. Jack stepped back slowly. The world around him felt like it was spinning again. The lines were blurring. The war, the reasons, the vengeance. He had buried the tank, buried the killer, but he hadn't buried the pain. Back at Hill 214, the camp was livelier than before. Soldiers were talking again, laughing even. News of the Black Ghost's death had spread fast. A legend had fallen, and Jack Turner's name was now being whispered around campfires like some kind of myth. 3 tigers and a king tiger, a British officer muttered as Jack walked past. Bloody hell. That's not a gunner. That's a damn magician. Another soldier clapped him on the back. Jack the Tiger Slayer. Jack didn't respond. He just kept walking, straight to the edge of camp where he'd found silence before. He sat down on a cold rock and pulled out the tin again. Mark's photo still looked the same, smiling in his uniform, proud, strong, certain. Jack stared at it for a while, then slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out the second photo, the one from the dead German. He placed both of them side by side. Two brothers, two sides, same war. He wondered if the boy in the German photo would grow up to fight like he had, if he'd carry the same hate, the same weight, if someone would one day shoot at him, like Jack had done to so many others. Footsteps crunched behind him. Collins again. This time, he brought 2 mugs of coffee, one in each hand. "You keep looking at that picture like it owes you something," he said, handing one to Jack. "It does," Jack said softly. "It owes me answers," Collins sipped. "There are no answers. Not in this war. There's just what you do, and what you try to live with afterward." Jack held both photos in his hand. "I killed him," he said. "The man who killed Mark. I should feel something. I should feel peace." "But you don't," Collins said. Jack shook his head. "No, I just feel tired." They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Collins said, "Go home when this is over, Jack. Don't stay like me. Don't let the war settle in your bones. You kill a part of yourself every time you fire that gun. Don't let it be the last part." Jack didn't answer. He just stared out at the horizon, where the clouds still rolled low and gray, because even though the tigers were gone, the war inside him had only just begun. A week had passed since Jack Turner buried the Black Ghost beneath the rubble of Saint Léonard, and yet the war refused to loosen its grip on him. The front lines had shifted east, pushing deeper into France as Allied forces gained ground. Lucky Girl had rolled through more towns, more ruins, and more fire. But nothing Jack saw since that day had been as loud as the silence that now lived inside him. He wasn't sleeping. Couldn't. Not with the dreams. Every time his eyes closed, he saw fire. The hollow eyes of the boy in St. Lo. The smoking tiger, too. Mark's face, smiling in that old photo, then vanishing in a wave of flame. By day, Jack did his job. Cleaned the gun. Checked the optics. Ran drills with the others. But everyone noticed the change. The edge in his eyes. The way he flinched at sudden noises. The calm he once had under fire was now a coldness that scared even his own crew. "He's cracking," Torres whispered to Mike one night. "He's got a 1,000-yard stare and 1 foot already out of this war." But Jack hadn't cracked. Not yet, because deep down he had started to believe the war wasn't done with him. And he was right. It came without warning. An intercepted radio transmission. Fragmented German Morse code, rushed, panicked, desperate. Allied intelligence decoded it just enough to get one thing clear. Der Geist lebt. The ghost lives. At first, it was dismissed as propaganda. German morale was falling apart. They were clinging to rumors, myths, any hope they had left. But then came a patrol report. Another Tiger II spotted near the Belgian border. Same markings, same tactics. A tank ambushed at night. 2 more destroyed the next day. And then, an American supply column wiped out near a village called Villers-du-Bois. Survivors swore the tank had a black skull painted on the turret. Everyone laughed it off. Everyone but Jack. He sat in the debrief room, fingers tapping the edge of the map. "It's him," he muttered. Collins leaned back in his chair. "Jack, we saw him. We buried him." "No," Jack said quietly. "We buried a man in that tank. But what if it wasn't Schwarzgeist? What if it was his gunner? Or someone wearing his insignia to protect him? He trained crews. Be advised, possible 3rd Tiger in area. Over. A 3rd Tiger." Mike slammed his hand against the side of the turret. "You've got to be kidding me. Another one? How many damn Tigers do they have?" "Too many," Collins muttered. "All right, boys, saddle up. We move west." "Wait," Jack said. "We only have smoke shells and HE rounds left. No more AP. We're not built to fight another tiger without AP. I know, Collins replied. But we've got no choice. We delay them, buy time for the infantry to fall back. Maybe link up with British tanks coming in from the north. Torres looked pale. So we're bait now? No, Collins said. We're a wall. They all knew what that meant. As they rolled west, the roads turned worse. Potholes from earlier bombings, charred husks of destroyed vehicles, and shattered homes lined the path. The people of St. Lo had already paid a price long before the tanks arrived. Jack stared out through his scope, his finger never leaving the trigger. His mind was racing. What trick could he use now? What weakness did a tiger have when you had no armor-piercing shells left? The thought gnawed at him like rats in the dark. Then, just ahead, they saw it. The third tiger. But this one was different. It was moving fast, faster than the others, like it had no interest in hiding or ambushing. Its turret swung left and right as it scanned, and behind it, two smaller German Panzerfreifus followed. They weren't just holding a position. They were hunting, and Lucky Girl was in the open. Reverse, Collins barked. The Sherman jolted backward, its treads tearing at the ruined street. They backed behind a stone farmhouse for cover as the tiger's main gun roared. A shell slammed into the wall just meters away, sending chunks of stone and fire flying. "We can't take that head-on," Torres shouted. "We'll be dead before we even reload." Jack was quiet, watching, thinking. "Jack?" Collins turned to him. "Talk to me. You got anything?" Jack's eyes narrowed. "Yeah. One more crazy idea." He pointed at the farmhouse. "That roof. It's made of slate. Weak. If we knock out the back wall and park the tank inside the building, we might be able to shoot from the shadows. If we time it right, when the tiger passes the door, we hit it from behind." Collins stared. "We're gonna hide a tank inside a house? Better than dying out here." Collins nodded. "Do it." Mike and Torres leapt out to guide the tank in as Jack kept his eyes on the approaching armor. The Sherman reversed through the back of the ruined farmhouse, crushing furniture, walls, and a rusted stove. The tank now sat in what used to be someone's kitchen, its cannon aimed straight at the doorway. And then they waited. The rumble came first, then the shadow. The tiger rolled past the front of the building, slowly, unaware. "Now!" Collins yelled. Jack fired a high-explosive shell, point-blank, into the tiger's exposed rear. The blast was deafening. Smoke burst out like a dragon's breath, but the tiger kept moving, wounded but not dead. Jack reloaded another HE round, hands frantic, heart pounding. "One more!" He fired again. This time, fire erupted from the back vents. The tiger stopped. The turret drooped. A second later, it exploded, ammunition cooking off in a brutal, fiery blast that shook the whole farmhouse. The crew was silent. Again, 3 tigers, and the Sherman was still, standing, but Jack didn't smile, because he knew now it wasn't luck anymore. Itidanaitu was war. Smoke still hung in the air like a curtain drawn between the living and the dead. The farmhouse they had used as cover was crumbling around them, its wooden beams cracking under the shock of the third tiger's explosion. Outside, the street was on fire. Flames crawled across the wreckage like serpents, devouring everything the war had touched. Inside Lucky Girl, Jack sat in silence, staring through his scope. His ears were ringing. His body was numb. He didn't even feel the heat anymore. He had just taken out a third tiger tank. 3 kills, 3 miracles. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like survival. And survival was starting to feel like a punishment. The radio squawked again, almost as if the war refused to let them breathe. Echo 3. This is Eagle Command. Heavy resistance cleared. British armor moving in. Good work out there. You've done enough for today. Fall back to rally point at Hill 214. Repeat, fall back and regroup. Over. Collins grabbed the handset, but his voice wasn't as sharp anymore. Copy that, Eagle. We're pulling out. Jack slowly looked at him. Are we really pulling out? Yeah, Collins nodded. This time we're getting the hell out. The tank creaked as it rolled out of the broken house. Torres, their loader, peeked out the hatch, shaking his head in disbelief at the burning wreck of the third Tiger. You believe this, Mike? He said, more to himself than anyone. 3 Tigers. That's not a war story. That's a damn legend. Mike Torres, who usually had something smart to say, was dead quiet. He just stared at the wreckage. After a long pause, he finally said, Jack's a killer, man. A real one. Jack didn't respond. He didn't want the praise. He didn't want the title. He just wanted to be anywhere but here. As they moved through the town, past bodies and broken homes, Jack saw something that made his stomach twist. A child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, sitting next to a body in the ruins of a collapsed house. The child didn't cry, just stared at the corpse with wide, empty eyes. French, probably. Maybe lost their parents in the bombing. Or to the Tiger tank Jack had just destroyed. His finger twitched on the gun trigger. He looked away. They reached Hill 214 by late afternoon. It wasn't really a hill, just a slope with some trees and a few trucks parked under camo nets. Other Sherman crews were there, most of them bruised, bloodied, or shaken. Some tanks were missing. Some crews didn't come back at all. When Lucky Girl arrived, a few heads turned. Word had already spread. People stepped aside like they were seeing ghosts. Hey, a British tank commander said, walking up. You lot the ones who knocked out 3 Tigers today? Collins didn't answer. The Brit nodded, impressed. Bloody hell. Your gunner must be touched by God. Jack climbed down from the tank without saying a word. He didn't want to be anyone's hero. He walked away from the camp, toward a quiet patch of trees at the edge of the hill. There, he sat down, pulled out a small metal tin from his pocket, and opened it. Inside was a picture, faded from the rain and folded too many times. It was his older brother, Mark, the real tank hero, the one who had died in North Africa when his own Sherman was blown apart by a German 88. Jack had joined the war to live up to him, to make his death mean something. But now he wasn't so sure. He looked up at the sky, still gray, still heavy, and asked quietly, Is this what you felt, Mark? When they called you a hero? When the others started treating you like you were invincible? He let the silence answer. After a while, footsteps approached. It was Collins, carrying a tin mug of coffee. Figured you'd be out here. Jack took the mug, but didn't drink. Collins sat down beside him, groaning a little as his back hit the tree. I've been doing this a long time, kid, Collins said. Longer than I ever planned to. And I've seen gunners, plenty of them. But what you did back there? That wasn't just skill. That was something else. Jack stared straight ahead. Then why does it feel like I'm the one who's dying? Collins sighed. Because you understand it now. Killing doesn't make you brave. Surviving it does. There was a long pause. Finally, Jack said, I don't want to be a legend, Sarge. Collins nodded. Good. That means you'll probably live long enough to go home. They sat in silence as the sun finally began to dip below the hills, casting a soft orange glow over the battered land. Somewhere behind them, a tank engine rumbled to life again, because even when the battle ends, the war never really does. The next morning, mist covered the French countryside like a wet blanket. Hill 214, where the surviving crews had regrouped, was quiet, too quiet. The usual clanging of tools, barking of orders, and distant artillery had faded. For once, there were no orders to move, no rushing to the front. But that didn't bring comfort. It only gave space for thoughts to creep in. Jack Turner sat alone beside Lucky Girl, rubbing down the cannon barrel like it was a wounded animal. His gloves were stained with oil and grime, but he didn't care. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the Tiger tanks again, saw them burning, saw the faces of the men who tried to escape them. He also kept seeing the boy in St. Lo, the one sitting next to a dead body. Maybe his father, maybe his mother, maybe both. Jack couldn't shake it. Suddenly, footsteps approached. Firm and fast. It was Lieutenant Briggs, the intel officer for the unit, a wiry man with sharp eyes and a map always in hand. He didn't usually come around unless something serious was going down. "Turner," Briggs said, not bothering with greetings. "I need you and your tank ready in 10 minutes. "This isn't a request." Jack stood slowly. "What's going on?" Briggs didn't blink. "We've intercepted German comms. A Panzer Ace is moving through the area. Code name Schwarzgeist, Black Ghost. Rumors say he's the one who trained the Tiger crews you just toasted." Jack's jaw tightened. "He's commanding a Tiger II, brand new. Better armor, heavier gun, smarter crew. He's already taken out 2 British Churchills on the west flank. Command wants you to intercept." Jack shook his head. "You think we can take on a Tiger II without AP rounds?" Briggs's tone was cold. "You're the only one who's done it before. 3 times. "That was luck," Jack growled. "And desperation. This one knows how we fight. We go after him now. We're not coming back." Collins had just walked over and heard the last part. He stepped between them. "Jack's right. He could have slipped out in the chaos. Why would he come back?" Jack looked up, eyes sharp. "To finish what he started, and to prove he can't die." Collins didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "All right. Say you're right. What do you want to do?" Jack stared at the photo on the wall. His brother's face again. "I want to end it. For good." They moved out the next morning. Just 2 Shermans and a recon jeep. A quiet mission. Unofficial. High Command didn't want to acknowledge the rumor, but they weren't about to stop Jack either. Lucky Girl led the way. As they neared Villers-du-Bois, the terrain grew tighter. Thick woods, narrow roads, broken bridges. Perfect country for ambushes. They found the first wreck 2 miles out. A Sherman, blackened and split down the middle. Its crew was gone. Just silence and the stench of oil and death. Collins stood next to it, frowning. "This wasn't a Panzer foe." "No," Jack said. "This was an 88, a Tiger shot." They pushed deeper, tension growing with every turn. Then, around the edge of a clearing, the forest suddenly fell silent. Even the birds stopped. Jack raised his binoculars, and there it was. Across the field, half hidden in a collapsed barn, the Tiger II. Same camo, same silhouette, but this time, the black skull wasn't painted on the side. It was burned into it, scarred metal, as if the tank itself had risen from fire. "He wants us to see him," Jack whispered. "He wants me to know it's him." Collins took a deep breath. "All right, how do we play this?" Jack looked down at the control stick, then back at the tank. "We don't play. We finish it." The tank duel that followed would be talked about for months, not because it was long, but because it was surgical. Jack didn't move straight in. He used the terrain, dips in the earth, burned out buildings, even the shadows from the smoke rising in the woods. He moved like a predator, patient, cold, and the tiger, whoever was inside it, waited until Jack broke cover. The tiger fired first. Missed. Jack responded not with a frontal shot, but another trick. He fired a smoke shell behind the tiger, then swung wide through the fog. It worked. For one fatal moment, the tiger's gunner hesitated, thinking Jack was flanking right, but Jack came left, right beside it. Almost muzzle to muzzle, he aimed at the turret ring, the same vulnerable gap from before, and fired. The shot hit home. The tiger didn't explode. It just stopped, like a puppet with its strings cut. Smoke hissed from its vents. No movement. No escape. Jack climbed out again. This time, when he reached the hatch, he was ready. He opened it slowly and looked inside. One man, alone, not dead yet. The German looked up, blood on his lips, a faint smile cracking through. "You're Mark's brother, aren't you?" he rasped. Jack froze. "You don't remember me," the man coughed. "But I remember you. You watched his tank burn. You were there, in the trees." Jack stepped back in horror. Because it was true. He had been in France that day, watching from a distance, powerless, and now he faced the man who had taken everything. Jack raised his pistol. The German closed his eyes. But Jack didn't shoot. He turned and walked away. "Let history bury you," he said. And behind him, the tiger finally breathed its last. The wind howled across the fields of Villers-du-Bois as Jack Turner walked away from the shattered Tiger Daru. Chantutur, his boots crunching over the blackened soil. Behind him, the German inside the tank, the man who had killed Mark, was dying, slowly, silently, in the belly of the beast that once ruled the battlefield. Jack didn't look back. He had pulled the trigger, not with his pistol, but with his choice to leave the man alive, to let the war consume him like it had consumed everyone else. That moment felt heavier than all three of his tiger kills. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about freedom. Jack had finally broken the invisible chain that had wrapped around his neck since Mark's death. He had stopped being a weapon. He had chosen not to be a killer. But war doesn't end just because you're done with it. By the time they returned to Hill 214, the skies were gray again, like they had been on that first day in Normandy. Rain had turned the ground to muck. Trucks came and went. Soldiers packed gear. Some were rotating out, finally being pulled back from the front. Jack climbed out of Lucky Girl one last time. He didn't even say goodbye to the tank. She had saved him. She had killed for him. And now she deserved rest, just like he did. Torres and Mike stood by the rear track watching him. "You heading home?" Torres asked. Jack nodded. "Orders came through this morning. Stateside. They want me off the line." "Yeah, I'd say you earned that," Mike muttered. "A little R&R, maybe a medal the size of a dinner plate." But Jack didn't smile. "I'm not going back to parades and newspapers," he said quietly. "I'm going back to figure out who I am without the gun." They didn't push. They understood now. Jack wasn't a legend to himself. He was a survivor of something deeper than war. He looked over at Collins, who was still talking with command officers near the mess tent. The old sergeant caught Jack's eye and gave him a small nod. No words, just respect. The kind you earn when you've seen each other at your worst, and still stood side by side. Jack returned the nod, then picked up his duffel. The train that took him from France rolled slow, like it understood the weight it carried. Soldiers leaned against the windows, faces empty, some trying to smile, others already lost in thoughts of home or nightmares that would follow them there. Jack sat alone, the two photos still tucked inside his coat pocket. Mark's photo and the one from the German tank. Two sons of war, two stories tied by hate, fire, and fate. He pulled them out now, looked at them again, one last time. Then, slowly, he folded them together and placed them in an envelope addressed to no one. He dropped it into a rusted field mailbox at the next stop. Let history decide what to do with ghosts. When Jack stepped off the train onto American soil, the war felt far away. The air was cleaner, the streets less broken, but the noise in his head was still there. A group of men were waiting on the platform, officers with cameras, reporters with notepads. They had come for the gunner who killed the tigers. Jack kept walking, right past them, right past the praise, the questions, the medals. He wasn't here to be remembered. He was here to remember. to remember who he had been before the war took everything. Weeks later, he stood at the cemetery, facing Mark's grave for the first time. The stone was simple. No ranks, no grand titles. Just a name, a birth year, and the year it ended. Jack knelt slowly and placed a folded piece of paper at the base. Inside was a letter. "I saw him, Mark. I saw the one who ended your story. And I could have ended his. But I didn't. I let the war bury itself. I hope that's what you would have done too. Not for him, but for me, for the part of me you always believed in. I'm home now. I still don't know who I am without the tank. But I'll find out. Maybe that's the fight worth winning. Maybe that's where peace really lives. Your little brother, Jack." As he stood, a breeze swept over the hilltop. The trees rustled, leaves scattered. The world felt alive again, not healed, but alive. And Jack Turner finally walked away from the war. Not as a hero, not as a killer, but as a man who had faced hell, walked through fire, and chosen to live.